so that we have a history of everything that has happened up to this point and why we ended up wherever we are going to end up. So what I'd like to do is start out just with a little bit of a introduction as some of the history, why we're here, and then we'll open it up to the actual forum where I'll encourage anyone that would like to speak to share their thoughts. Just a couple precursors. I built this presentation for an anticipation that may end up with people with varying goals in coming. So, as an educational organization, our expectation is for everybody in the forum to serve as a role model for civility, and especially for our students, because while there are hundreds of adults here today, we do have our student government representatives up here, and we want to make sure that as an educational organization, we're always doing the best we can for our students. Sort of some basic outline so that we can hear from everyone. We'll limit everyone to about 3 minutes, although looking at the number of folks we have, we'll obviously have an opportunity to extend beyond that. We are going to limit today to 2 hours in total length. There are many sessions scheduled, and we will continue to have these sessions until everyone's voice has been heard. In addition to the public forums that we have, I've accepted phone correspondence from individuals. I have had written letters that have been sent in, and just a little bit of where our students are. Actually, do either of you want to talk about some of the work the students done? Not even because we don't really have student government here just yet. They've had some work. So we've also been working very closely with our student government. They have compiled questions for a survey of the student body. That survey will be put out to all of the students. Let's see, not next week. I'm sorry, next week. There will also be on March 9th forums during the school day where students will sign up and have the opportunity, if they wish to, verbally share their thoughts. So the goal here is that we'll accept communication in pretty much any form. Many times people aren't comfortable speaking in a community type forum like this. So if they'd like to write, they can do that, or if they just want to meet individually, have a phone, that can occur as well. So up to this point in time, I'll go through a little bit of what we have done so far, but a little bit of the history. So just a quick search back through our yearbooks. One of the first times that I was able to identify reference to the Warriors was in the 1937 yearbook. I could probably have gone back farther, but I guess that pretty much makes the point, right? Salamanca has been identified as the Warriors for 80 plus years. The logo that has been associated with the Warriors has changed over the past 50 years. And about 20 years ago, the school district went through a process of reflecting on the Warriors and the Native American logo that we currently identify with. And at that point in time, reaffirmed its commitment to both of those. And then fast forward a little bit, or actually let's continue with some of the history here. Prior to 1978, the logo that was associated with the school district, you can see there on the left. That's what was typically used to represent the district. In 1978, the Seneca logo, or what we refer to as the Warrior logo, was developed by Carson Waterman, who just acknowledged in the audience or here contributing is here today. So thank you very much. We're happy to see you. And then just some other ways and things that we have seen. So, since 1978, Warriors, we know, if you're in the community here, has been pretty much pretty prevalent. It's in our halls, it's on our clothing, and has taken several different varieties, one of which we see somewhat more modern is the one with the logo actually embedded into the term Warriors. In December, well, actually, I'll back up a little bit. In, let's say, February or March of last year, the district recognized that we were very inconsistent in our color schemes, in the use of the fonts that are all over the district. So we worked with a company out of Buffalo to sort of come up with a consistent brand. There was also a talk at that time to emphasize not just the Warriors, but an S for Salamanca, which goes back several decades to when S was also prevalent. We engaged them and they developed in December. It just happened to coincide with the release and memo, which causes us to be here. But we were already well underway of having another, what we refer to as a letter mark. So the one you'll see there, the S, that is one that has been put aside to be utilized in addition to the Warrior logo, does not replace it. We now have a color scheme that'll be consistent, as well as a font that is specific to Salamanca Warriors. So they sort of put a branding package together, especially as we begin to update some of our signs and whatnot. So that's a little bit of some of the symbols that have been utilized throughout the district over the past several decades. So why are we here today? Well, November 17th, the State Education Department issued a memo that required the elimination of Native American mascots. A few weeks later, so on December 1st, they issued a follow-up memo that put in a proposed timeline. So, you know, sort of, this is how state ed typically does things. And we saw this an awful lot during the pandemic. They would make an announcement, typical to them, it's Friday at 4, so that everybody gets worked up over the weekend without any real correction. But in this particular case, they said on November 17th, listen, a new rule is coming. You're going to have to eliminate any references to Indigenous or Native American names or logos. More information will follow. Well, a couple weeks later, they put another memo together, which really didn't provide us with too much more information, other than saying that this rule, which is still just being proposed, is scheduled to become permanent on May 3rd of this year. By the end of this school year, so June 30th of 23, school boards will have to make a commitment to eliminate the Indigenous names, logos, and mascots. And then they have 2 years to essentially eliminate those logos, names, or mascots from all materials, athletic fields, for the district. So once again, this is all relatively proposed. There's no reason to indicate that it will not become a permanent rule on May 3rd. What is glaringly missing for folks that are in my position, which is, you know, what does this actually mean? And as many of you may have seen, there is sort of a waiver, or I'm going to refer to it as a potential exception, which states that school district can keep their logo, their name, as long as it has what I'll refer to as a blessing from, it simply said, a Native American tribe. It doesn't even have to be in New York State according to that. But once again, they didn't give us the real rules of what was supposed to be followed. So we started these public forums last month. I'm still hoping that we will get some rules that we know to follow. But with that, those memos, we are in conflict in the sense that we have native symbology, which is our current use of our warrior logo, also with the feather that is woven within the S, and the, I'm referring to it as the identity, that we call ourselves the warriors. So that puts us in conflict with the memo. I've also had an opportunity to meet with the Seneca Nation to ensure that we are of the same mind moving forward. The district is 100% committed to supporting the Seneca Nation, and they have indicated that they don't really know where they are just yet. We need to gather information. And that is really the point of these public forums, is to get a sort of a reading of people and gather input. The district is also 100% committed to an entirely transparent process, meaning there is not going to be a back door or back room meeting that's going to be held where a decision is going to be made. Everything will occur in public. Everyone's voices will have the opportunity to be heard. But I also want to say that there's a caveat with that. We also recognize that many times organizations have a tendency to lean toward the loudest voice as opposed to the correct voice. And I want you to know that myself, our students, our school board is committed to making the correct choice moving forward, not necessarily just the popular choice. So the input that we gather will help us with that, but we will also be looking at research and other data points to ensure that moving forward, we make the choice that's best, particularly for our students, because that's what we're here for. Okay, so these are some of the guiding questions that have been suggested. They, of course, do not have to be followed, but these are just modified a little bit from the questions that our student government came up that we'll be asking the students. And it sort of circulates around, the Native American logo and the term warrior. So just very briefly, what do you believe it means to be a warrior? Do you identify with the term warrior? Do you have any concerns over the term warrior? And then we transition basically the same thing to your thoughts about the Native American logo. What are your thoughts on it? Do you identify with it? And do you have any concerns over the logo itself? So I think at this point in time, that would be it. All right. So at this point in time, I really would just ask that, if you have comments or thoughts, I've been transcribing them and I will follow up with you to ensure that I have correctly interpreted what you said. I would think by the end of the week, a lot of this information will be put onto a website, along with the video recordings of the meetings themselves, so that everyone has an opportunity to see progress that has occurred up to this point. Yes, sir.
So earlier, when you were given that introduction, you said you're going to make the right choice. Can you define what right is?
Great question. So I think right would be the decision based upon both input from our student body, adults, members of the community, but is substantiated by data and evidence of a more scholarly nature that would indicate that we are doing, and I hate to throw the term moral in, but I think that it might have a place here. The right thing is to ensure a safe environment for our students. And that doesn't necessarily mean just physically safe, but psychologically safe as well. I think we can all think of times where it's easy to make decisions based upon the popular vote, but overall it's not the moral or right thing to do. We recognize the difference between the two, and we're going to take the high ground. Hopefully, the answer on that enough answer.
So how will you determine space is psychologically safe for children?
Sure. So part of it will be gathering from the input from the students themselves, also from experts in the field, as well as what scholarly articles we have. And Dr. Taylor wrote a essay, maybe about 20 years ago, that I've had the opportunity to reflect on, and with that is a full plethora of resources that made it easy to look up. So those are dictated there, and we will utilize those.
Can you share that with the community?
Oh, absolutely.
Because I've been looking at the questions. I like the questions, but there's no background information to the warriors. So when you ask someone under 18, how do you feel about school pride? It's really easy to be emotional in that response.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go back to that first logo back to 1937, I find myself wondering if we are aware of how that name came into being. Because we know that Salamanca is a squatted area. And so this could be almost like a backhanded compliment to the community while their land is being stolen. And so that really plays into the psychological welfare of people. And I like the questions, but I feel like there has to be a little bit more background for those students to make an informed answer to those basic questions. And they don't have that education to make that.
Right. No, I understand that. I think we still have time to amend that. Thank you.
And did I ask if you could share that essay with everyone?
Yes, I just want to Yeah, let me, it's, I've talked to them, get it, but it's- yeah. Just want to make sure I honor them technically. I know everybody else says. Yes, sir.
Around nineteen fifties, I'm understanding. St. Bonaventure University asked the Central Nation for permission to use our identity and our culture in their design for their emblem. They used a Western style headdress. And I don't have any images of that, but I do recall that. Then the high school asked, we opened our Seneca Iroquois National Museum in 1976. So there was discussion about these issues with what St. Bonaventure had, and that we recognize that it's kind of inaccurate in terms of the style of the headdress. So I designed one, which you see there in post 1978. I did that with some instructions, kind of, or suggestions from George Herring. Further to that, I didn't see very many gustolettes. That's what we call that headdress, single eagle feather standing. And so I did this sketch, and then I did the artwork, and that accepted, and that's what they've been using. And then since then, I've seen the 2022, the S with a feather. It has totally kind of ignored our identity. That design, to me, it's a nice corporate commercial style design.
Sure.
But it seems to totally eliminate the Seneca culture. And this is our territory. I don't need to go into the history, but there's certain rights and such that have to be considered. So anyway, what I've done here is I've redesigned that and put a fuller style and more updated Gustola on it. I guess I could just pass this around so you can see.
Sure.
Or Laura, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Could you take this and throw it around? Well, you. Yeah, she's gonna hand out a new updated version of that that I designed. I'd like to mention that the first design prior to 1978 with the full Western style headdress, our environment influences our artwork by almost everything. So our ancestors wouldn't wear that style headdress. It wouldn't, because of the trees and the bushes and all. So our gustolettes and our outfits were always compact because of our environment. So it's pretty logical why the design that we have. So we have an opportunity to educate our younger people, to mention to them that this is what it was before, and this is what it, maybe should be, and this is what it might be, if everybody accepts.
You mind if I just sort of summarize that to make sure I've got it down correctly?
Say again?
You mind if I just sort of summarize what you said, so I can make sure I.
Please do.
So one of the big takeaways I heard was our new corporate logo, our S. And it really did, I guess, sterilize or eliminate the history and culture that's specific and relative to the Seneca. You also had the opportunity and have provided sort of an updated 1978 logo, and believe that that provides an opportunity to discuss the history, and how our art and, not just our art, but our apparel, I guess, would reflect the geographic location that we live in. Was there anything else that I might have missed or misinterpreted?
No, that's pretty much,
All right.
pretty much what I wanted to say.
Okay. What else? Yes, ma'am. Oh, sorry.
My question is, if there is going to be a change in specifically for the warrior, what would be the alternative?
So that's a great question. And I sort of recommended that we almost kick that down the road a little bit, because before we get to that point of what could it be or what should it be, and we collectively need to make a decision, are we going to change it or not? Otherwise, the waters get so muddy that we lost, I believe we can lose track of, you know, is this first who we are and how we identify? If so, okay, terrific. If not, then that's a great question. That'll be a whole nother, well, lots forums on that, and those will be probably more robust.
Just me being an alumni of obviously the class of 2022.
Yeah.
I feel like nowadays kids are kind of more getting into like more vintage stuff, I would say, like older stuff, and I think this detail, the updated one would fit a lot better, I think, than just the normal S, because S that can look like something like Stanford or something, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
How mainly high school little teams like Little League baseball, how they do like the little Cleveland Indians or stuff like that. It's kind of what this kind of reminds me of, like you're copying something. So, but this original one, I think is awesome. So
Have the feathers or represent like all native unlimited.
kind of like making us our own, you know?
Mhm.
Like not in the spotlight, but hey, I mean, kind of are, went to state final four last year, so we kind of are in the spotlight. And you know, when you roll up, when you go like for me, I was on the sideline last year with the hype man. So a lot of the things you see as an athlete, you see all these AA schools, A schools walking out with like tech fits on, where they're customized down 30, the number, last name. Imagine that if you had a cool ass logo like this on the side right here. That'd be bomb. Oh yeah.
So just to summarize, you like the logo?
Yeah, oh, yeah, oh, yes, I do. I like how it, you know, it's that old school / old school, you know, that new and old, but like I said, kids nowadays, like me personally, like if I had $1 million, I was a millionaire, I personally want like a drive-in down here and sell, make like a little ordering, maybe bomb, I mean, bro, it's on my bucket list on my phone, but yeah, like, I mean, I don't know. I kind of like the old school with also the new school in it, but like I said, I love this one.
I have another question.
Yeah.
So with that, what kind of community conversation was held, and then what kind of response has there been from the community with the S and the word?
Sure, so we had a lot of this was developed during the pandemic, so most of it was through Zoom sessions. It originated when we were building Vets Park, and the school board indicated that we wanted to emphasize Salamanca, not just the Warriors. So that's where the S came from, and we sort of resurrected that from, I believe it was the 50s and 60s, where on most of the uniforms was the S. During a similar conversation regarding the warrior logo was that it should be a symbol of respect and that it may not have a location on everything that we put it on. The bottom of seat cushions, the middle of the floor. So that was where we said, okay, maybe we need to take a look at another identity or identifier. So as far as the community input, it was presented a couple different times to various groups of people. The first go around where we were, it was done, the feather was incorrect. So we sent it back and the feather was changed. And then it just sort of was presented to the school board, I believe, in early December. So it wasn't a huge, we didn't have a tremendous amount. We really just brought back the S that was Salamanca from years ago. Wanted to have an indigenous relation to that. And the belief of the single eagle feather representative of the single feather, and it was sort of tied together.
So I'm a transplant to the city, and I'm not familiar with all of the history and all of the branding. I really like how the board is set up here. Do you have folks who could kind of like scan in how it's been changing over time, the different iterations of the S's and whatever?
We do, but there are actually, I'd safely say, hundreds of different colors, which isn't a problem. And, so one of the things that brought up the request to sort of come up with a consistent font and whatnot was just that, is that even if I go to Betts Park now and stand at one point, I can see 3 different fonts for the sign, the field. And a lot of organizations will have a consistent, this is our color, this is the Pantone for red, for gray, this is the font we utilize. And that's really what we wanted from that, that organization. The letter mark sort of just came about as, we needed something to identify. And so it has taken off, and I'll go back and say the intent was never to replace the warrior logo that we see. It was really to be utilized to identify the school district in manners where perhaps we don't place the honor that would be reflective of the warrior logo. But that came up as a concern, and it was just everywhere.
Okay, so I am speaking as a parent, not as a employee of the Seneca Nation. So my statements today are as a district member and parent. It is, of course, difficult to not mesh my professional job and my parent job. So there's a few things I'll say that I'm sure both. I commend the school district's attempt to realign branding. That's a serious issue, font, branding, all of those things. I have a concern. I too am a transplant to the city. I come from a district that went through a painful realignment of naming that is still not a settled issue among community members. I understand the clinging to the past for, pride and hometown spirit and those kinds of things. I think that when we know better, we do better. And cultural appropriation was never okay. And we know now that it's not. And I think that we need to right the wrongs of the past and move forward. As a parent, my child is a first grader. She does not yet have any Salamanca Warriors merchandise. I will not allow her to wear something that is disrespectful in my eyes. I think that it's, and I've shared this with Carson, the artist, prior to this, so that I wasn't hurting feelings. I think that the logo is disrespectful to Seneca women. I don't think it is inclusive of all. I also think that, as was mentioned by my colleagues, that the Salamanca School District has the opportunity to set the standard, right? They get to set the standard because they sit on the territory. And I think the standard is saying, we're changing because this wasn't right, and here's our plan. Your S to me looks like a seagull feather because it's white and being used in white. So a Salamanca seagulls, I'm not sure where that's going. I'd like to know who's analyzing the data. Obviously, you are the superintendent and you're taking notes and those kinds of things, but it's not clear to me as a community member who's taken all of these, these conversations, conglomerating them into one, and then making the choice that's right, as you mentioned. I think that in the end, I hope that the standard that's taken on is the example that's given to other districts. There are districts here that use the word warrior in a more appropriate context. They use a W or something along those lines instead of the warrior that's been connected here historically. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. Okay. So let me just make sure I've got a couple of these points right, which is why I'm recording this as well. You preface by saying that you understand the community will cling to, the past. You made the point that cultural appropriation is and never has been, right? You identified that the logo doesn't connect or perhaps is not respectful to Seneca women and is not inclusive to everyone. And that the school district has the opportunity to set the standard, given that we live on territory, are on territory. You indicated that you are not a fan of the feather, and you hope the district.
We'll communicate
Oh,
that
yeah.
they're setting
Oh,
the
that's
standard
good.
and why,
Yeah.
so that other school districts can utilize Sound Lake as an example of right or wrong. The one thing I did mention too about the feather is where I stand with reading the NICEAD regulations. Your feather is still not in compliance with that. So,
Oh, yeah, no.
yeah,
it's-
so
oh,
that's my
absolutely.
point, so that everyone knows. I know you know that, but
Yeah, oh yeah, that, all of this is a mess.
right.
Or let's just say not compliant.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Just like to begin by introducing myself and that's who I am. My English name is Dennis Bowen. And one of us is over 75, so he could be called an elder. He's in the last fourth of a century. The rest of us we're almost elders. We're in our early 70s. Tyler's maybe 75. But to come here with a family love, a compassion for our children. We have two granddaughters of Salamanca sitting here with us. It'll be their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren, that we want this place to be a healthy place for them. And this has to do with thought, feelings, and emotions. In our prayers and our songs, there are prayers and songs to balance thinking, feelings, and emotions to have a healthy life. And so we're honored to have these two daughters here. Looking at this, among our nations, our indigenous nations in this hemisphere, from Alaska down to the tip of South America, we have cultural thought and teachings. And so, yes, a seagull has a white feather, but the bald eagle has a white tail. And those white tail feathers from a bald eagle, they're part of our medicine way of life, our teachings, our love, our unity, growth. So there's ceremonies where our people are given a white eagle tail feather, and some are given the black and white, the tail feather that's white with a black tip. There's some that are given an eagle plume. Women generally are given an eagle plume. And so I think we're here to support the word warrior. And it's been something we grew up with.
And in 64, 65, 66, we were undefeated on a football field. And Tom George and Chuck Light went to play at Syracuse from being a Salamanca football player. They played with Larry Zonka, Lloyd Little, Mel Tom, Hall of Famers. Our players went and played with them. And so that's an experience, life experience. There's other life experience. In 92, we stood on a highway and stood for sovereignty. And the governor backed down because sovereignty, the law of this land, oversees state governors and state legislatures. That's what a feather can represent, but it represents prayer. A way of life with prayer. The word warrior may not be in our language, any of our indigenous languages. The word that you'll hear is protector, defender. And warrior comes from Europe. From 1,000, you can look this up, Wikipedia, from 1,000 to 1499, there were, what, 367 wars in Europe. Over 360 wars, war. And in that time, those, I would call them nations. Some were very small nations, but they developed the science of war. In our people, we had defenders and protectors, but we also had the great law of peace. That a being came here and united 5 nations, which later became 6 nations with the Tuscarora. We had fallen in love with war. This person came, brought the great law of peace. And so, how can you share a message for the generations of children that will be in this school? How does warrior connect with peace? Spiritual peace, physical peace, emotional peace. Be that kind of a defender and protector of life. Life is precious. The blanket out there on the window is part of the movement to remember the children who went to boarding school. A lot of them never came home. Buried. And people lost their children to education system at that time. And so to have discussion, not just in the near future, but part of the curriculum every year on peace. When the Europeans came here to our homeland, they told us we have to believe like they do. And they said that walking among them was a person of peace. And he brought the great law of peace to Europe. And they said he was the son of the Creator. Our people know the Creator. Like one of our elders said, we didn't know the Creator had a son here on this hemisphere until they came and told us. We always have a relationship with the Creator. So the feather, it has educational purposes, educational capabilities to have our children have a healthy life so they don't die young. They don't die from an overdose. They don't die from violence. They don't die on the highway, speeding. We want our children to live. There's times of ceremony. When you go in a ceremony, the leader conducting that, before they close the flat, before they start, they say, we are here so that our people can live. It's very profound belief. You've got good teachers, good administrators, counselors. When they come in here, if you listen to their words, they're saying the same thing. I'm here so that these students can live. We support them. We have some unhealthy people in the communities, some in our own family. And so while this ties back to our history of life on Mother Earth, the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, wants to push out Black history. And this is Black History Month. And that memo that came out in December to push out anything that is a cultural identity is pushing us out. And that's what we faced. We were always pushed out, locked out. We look at the curriculum. Our people were pushed out of the curriculum right from the beginning. We had to learn about Europe. So the people that have improved curriculum, that have included the beauty, the wisdom, and the wellness, the health of our people as we walk on earth. They're in some of the curriculum now that's coming up across Turtle Island. You go to education conferences and you've got cultural components in the curriculum. It has to do with peace, life. So I think we feel like we're protectors and defenders of family love, compassion. And we're defenders and protectors of understanding, which is empathy. We are protectors and defenders of fairness. The peacemaker put that in our ceremonies to be fair to everyone, all life. And so it's an everyday step that's good. And so, yes, there's some things in the near future to have dialogue. Yes. Let's nurture that as long as we walk on earth and work together on this. There's staff that were here in the 60s that encouraged us, made us want to come to school. And there were staff that made us not want to come to school. The staff from that time are gone. With racism, you got to hang in there because the racists one day will die. It's our children and grandchildren, their day can be safer, can be better. One of the history teachers, Mr. Rich, helped me be a student. It was the one time I made the honor roll. That's when he helped me. He made me love history. If you listen to Tyler and Mo, we like history. We want to share it. I was in seventh grade. I liked to play football. Tyler and I used to play when we were little boys. And I used to wear glasses, and I'd always break my glasses. And when I came here from Rithouse School, it was all Seneca at Rithouse School. It was the first time we were around white kids. And it was very interesting. And it was strange. We weren't used to their facial features. How they smell, how they talk. One boy gave me the finger in seventh grade, and I said, "What does that mean?" And all the other boys laughed at me. I was coming from another way of life. In seventh grade, I'd broken 2 pairs of glasses. And my grades in science went down, so the teacher asked me, she said, "Where are your glasses?" I said, "I don't have them." She's, "You want to sit in the front?" Because all those notes for the day were up there and everyone's writing the notes down. And I sat at the front and I could just barely see some of them. She said, "How come you don't have glasses? Don't your parents love you?" That's the struggle with ignorance. Learn ignorance. It came from Europe, of our people. The Pope, several popes made papal bulls that said we were heathens, infidels, and that because the papal bull said you can go over there and take their land. Said, "You're nothing." In 1550, in the high courts of Spain, in Valladolid, right near the University of Salamanca. Put that in the history curriculum. University of Salamanca was the 3rd educational institute for spiritual thought and theology that the Pope sanctioned. The 3rd one of all Europe. It was a place of learning. There was a case there. One person, and these were Spanish people, one person had come here after Columbus came here. And they practiced encomiende. Encomiende was a law that they could come into this land and cut down all the trees and make plantations and enslave our people. And that's what they did. But we didn't make good slaves. We resisted. And so the Pope passed another papal bull and drew a demarcation line from the north to the south in the Atlantic Ocean. And they said, now Portugal, go into Africa and set up Portuguese villages and take the black people and make slaves out of them. So Spain became Times Square for the slave traffic. And they brought black slaves to do the work. And so the church had a part of the genocide. Yet for me, with anger I felt since I can do that. I was at the airport. And the planes were loading up. There's no place to sit except one seat. And I found the seat. And I sat down. I sat down next to a nun. And we began to talk. And she was very happy. We talked about the teachers in our life that we've had. We told stories. And then someone was standing there with their luggage and they said something. I hate it when we have to wait. You know, I hate this airline. They're always late with their flights. I hate it. And that nonsense, one of my teachers said, no, you don't. Some people say, I hate spinach. I hate broccoli. I hate spaghetti. I hate this. I hate TV shows. I hate the Kansas City Chiefs. And she said, my teacher says, no, you don't. You don't know what hate is. We have a history knowing what hate is. And that teacher that said, don't your parents love you? Put me down in front of the people, classmates. Her husband taught mechanical arts. He used to like to grab our hair and twist it and pull on it and yank our hair. When I was a sophomore, he told me to cut my hair if I was going to play football. I did. We went undefeated 3 years. But I had to find a thought, the feelings and the emotions and balance them to finish this high school. Some of my friends didn't want to do that and they dropped out. Cousins, my neighbors. I went to school at Rithouse with them since kindergarten. And so I retired from working in the school in Arizona 10 years ago. In the 1970s, we had the biggest Native American high school in the country, 1,600 students, 9 through 12. Beautiful time. 97% Native, Navajo, Hopi, Paiute, other nations. We have 65% Native teachers. In that environment, I always remembered Salamanca. There were only a few of us here, maybe 15, 20% of the student population. And so we come here feeling, what are we going to do for their future? Yes, in the past, there was ugly racism, ugly. You couldn't walk down Kent Boulevard in the 1950s if you were Seneca. They called the police. Now there's Seneca families living on Kent Boulevard. Some of the names of white people that push their people around. My family lives in one of the houses of those Salamanca fathers. They died and they're gone. So let's nurture this kindness, this listening. We're going into our 4th year of COVID. We're seeing the literature on how children fell behind for over a year because of virtual education. They lost their contact with people, with teachers. They had to stay home. They lost family through COVID. We were traumatized in other ways from our family way of life, like COVID. Now we're coming back and we're here so that our people can live, children can live. What else did it do to our thinking? COVID. It did some of the same things that how our thinking was impacted when George Floyd was murdered on the street in Minneapolis by a police officer. Within 4 years, the peacemaker brought the great law of peace here. So the leaders of faith have a voice that it's important for them to be heard. The United States says no, keep religion out of the school. We're saying keep love in the school. Love is spiritual. So the leaders of faith from all denominations and from our way of life, you are going to contribute to these daughters and their classmates. So warriors from Europe, like a lot of things. But we know who we are. We're still here. That wasn't the plan when the Pope signed those papal bulls in the doctrine of discovery. So Governor DeSantis, Governor Hochul, we pray that they'll become educated. Curtis Mayfield, who's a blues, rhythm and blues creative genius. One of his songs, the lyrics say, educated fools from uneducated schools. Let's improve the curriculum. Not just for one time, but for every day. Spend time on that. Be an educated school. So we're not educated fools. Some of the smartest people are dysfunctional. They have a hard time keeping a job. They're prone to illness. So I wouldn't listen to Pat. But that's the message, you know, that hate. 30 years as high school students, what's the opposite of hate? Say love. What's the opposite of love? Hate. Say, okay, from ceremonial thinking, the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is fear. Now, hate, the opposite of hate is peace. The peacemaker walked among us over 1,000 years ago. Peacemaker walked among the people in the Middle East, born in Bethlehem. Peacemaker walked over there. So the opposite of hate is peace in here. So we have words of hatred, words of anger. We need to know the pathology. Where did that begin? Dinas de su Poveda, he argued in the court in Spain that we were not human beings, we were part animal. Therefore, we could be dominated, ruled, and killed. One of our teachers, Seneca, who taught at the University of Buffalo, John Mohawk, he said, Sepulveda is the grandfather of modern racism. And the grandfather of racism is Pope Alexander VI, with his papal bull. That's the pathology. When our relatives at Top Supermarket in Buffalo were massacred in May, and people were saying, how could this happen here? Why here? And they asked the mayor, the former mayor of Buffalo. He was a mayor for 18 years. Very intelligent. leader for many to be reelected. They asked him on TV, you know, what do you think? And he said, I don't know why this happened. When you study the pathology of this behavior, you can go back to Sepulveda, 1550, the Pope, 1493, a year after Columbus went back. That's the pathology, part of the pathology. Sometimes we need to hear that history that sounds ugly. You know, we can find peace, compassion, empathy. It would be time to sing and dance. I work as a school district prevention coordinator. I also manage the crisis response team, which is a tough job. I work with the police, the EMTs, the fire department, the funeral homes. I was certified as a suicide intervention skills counselor. I worked with suicide issues for 43 years. And I didn't even know it until I went and got certified. And I thought, I've been doing this since 1972. Wow. You've got with people. They're part of this team. Got it.
You know,
Yeah.
nobody said, but I do it different, right? Yeah, I understand that too. We have done way we can't, I also. Very excited to me. I think why the ear plan. That's when they got. Our heathen. I know I got a couple of stories to tell. First off, I look around, I see some warriors here. There, Carson Waterman, Vietnam vet, and John. We do have a word, in Seneca for warriors. Many of those go, he's a great warrior. We do have a word, but Seneca language isn't about English language. The word is about what we do or the act of. So that word, in the sense that is uses, and 3 days before Memorial Day, Carson, myself, some other put United States flags on our veterans. The flagpole to the graveyards has our Haudenosaunee flag on there, the Seneca Nation flag. But we have veterans in those graves from the Revolutionary War, Civil War, Spanish American War, World War I, II, I mean, go on and on. I think there's almost 300 flags we put on the graves. And they're warriors. That's where they serve, what units they serve. The thinking was that those warriors was not fighting for the United States, it was fighting for other land. We had. So they fought. My father, the Native brothers, oh, the thought was, well, how do we protect? We don't have a standing army or something in our forces. So how are we going to protect? We're going to where it's not find it. He didn't tell this whole story. One of the classic games ever was against Olean. And Olean was down on the 2-yard line. They made a touchdown there to win, and they would have been undefeated. We lost the game. Then it stopped. And it was in the paper going against the goal line. In fact, I had to remember something. I don't know, about 10 years ago, I had to celebrate that. So that's goal line bone. So warrior. So the warrior just was
I gave a speech one time. Where some attitude. It's. It's a. Because of my ancestors. Wow. I think they were great warriors. And people get caught up in, I coached football for years. I coached the West End Warriors. In these midgets. Then we went to two teams, and so the Warriors will get dissolved, so there are two teams that are gonna merge, and so they had a vote. And at that time, the Washington Redskins were the big pro team, and the kids, they let the kids vote. Some like the Redskins. I think anyway. And so I was interviewed by a reporter from the so what do you think about that? Oh, I have my issues with it, but I'm very cool. Change. So I retired. It was about 4 years, and Ray Wass came in. What do you think about coming out of retirement? Yeah. But you have two conditions. One, you change that risk of name to Warriors. Number two, keep the parents off my back. He said, well, what do you want? I said, I want to be Randolph. So he changed the name, kept the parents on my back, he beat Randolph. So that was part of that other thing, and I look at it as people get caught up. I didn't like the Redskins, but boy, I sure did like your logo. And what happened? Seneca Satrum's football came on a reservation in Cattaraugus. They took that Washington Redskins logo and put it on their helmets, and they're the Satrums. Now, I didn't have any use for that name, and I didn't have any use for the, Cleveland Indians, Cuyahoga, that's a Seneca name for their group. But I didn't like the character they had, the cartoon. It was about before COVID. I don't know, I was beaten down. I had a couple of temperatures. On there, and they had this guy in this spooky Indian outfit. Oh, just, and he's dancing around there. And I told him, what do you think happened? I went over and sucker punched that guy. Don't you dare, she grabbed me by the arm, but I think maybe one or two more Budweiser, I would have did something like that, but things change, but I don't want to see a change here. That's a word, is an attitude. It's not about, a word isn't about race. It isn't about who you are, where you came from. It's what you do. It's the deeds that you stand up for, or deeds that you do standing up for things, joining the service, being a veteran. I was standing in line at the clinic, destination clinic, a couple of young guys behind me. They were talking about warriors. That different folks. I wasn't standing up right there. Get on over what it looks like right there at the end. It's a Marine Corps veteran serving Desert Storm. Oh, there's a warrior. You guys are all taught what you do. So you do something to make yourself a warrior. So, I don't want to see it change. I like to see things like what you see sometimes. It's God's life. Like 1978, there's nothing wrong with that. It's on it's all over. It's who we are. It's what, this is not a territory land here. It's ours. You guys are a guest here. You signed a lease here. So I don't want to see it change. That shouldn't just have too much invested in our community, in our cemeteries, in our way of thinking. Without that warrior attitude, where would we be? So We watched our homes being built in 1964. The anger is still with me. Still with me. And there was no such thing as some kind of syndrome to get when you're traumatized. Maybe there is. I'm I'm gonna be 76 years old. It still hurts. But I don't want to see that change. But the leadership, the 60s and the 50s, guess what they were? They were World War II veterans. They were warriors. Without them, where would we be? But, you know, I guess this name changing, what it is. Then it's talk about Salamanca. You know how we got our name? Oh, this, on our land, we call it Honatnago, among the Hemlock. That's what we called it back in the day. Salamanca was some kind of rich Spanish financier who financed the railroads. You know what the railroads brought us? Pieces that were controversial, but the controversial again. And they named our land after some Spaniard financier. Now, to me, I think it may be a bigger issue. Let's scrap the name Salamanca and let's put a son in it. Or no, Joe Hesta, but you're gonna know. I mean, you can go down the line with the, like a little village go down through there. Maybe that's what we ought to focus on, and changing the name of Salamanca, because it, to me, it's some guy from Spain comes over, comes a bunch of money at the year, like, what else that? We're swindled out of our land through these leases and whatnot, and we name the city after it. Maybe youth members ought to take that. Let's go after those. Let's take it back. But I stand on. Let's keep that word. Let's keep. The one record. Yeah. They don't want to see a change. So. Ingrained in us. Moving in a plan. We're gonna take some of our land, reuse our land that was taken by the zoo. It's a big controversial. We may have to fight it for every years. So these are the old seats. And instead of old 17, might be old 17 new homes down there. Yeah. But again, we have to system, we have to have that more attitude. One of the targets, so what are the 12 engineers gonna do? You know, Sullivan's Rig, Burner Village along the Tennessee, Buffalo Creek, burn, Kinzoo burn. You think we're gonna let that happen again? Why? Because we didn't have that. That resist. That's really all I have. So I got all kinds of stories I could tell. You know, I want to be respectful to the words that we put those flags on. Someday we come back, we got people that are buried in the building. Yeah. So fighting not for nice space, but for us here, for the next community. So the order is a term of respect. Who we are here. I mean, I know sports team, warriors, sports have to. Also, that. This place where it lives, we should be. And that's the next step, our young. Something you guys should pass the whole and change. I think that's the warriors here. Have done enough. But we can pass on that with them, maybe we can light some fire.
So, well, now I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still on. You do it, and it's your turn. Ain't name what, his name. I want to thank everybody for being here for some reason. Well, in 1978, we had this discussion. It's not a new discussion. And it's something that I really, on a scale of 1 to 10 in life, I had to choose life recently. And I had COVID. So I'm here for my grandson. And I want the rest of my life to count, and I can't waste it. So, like a crazy fool, I got back into politics. I get to hear a lot of our people and what they're needing. Should make a difference, at least for the rest of my years. I'm here with Tyler and Dennis, Carson, my brother, and we talked about this. And let me tell you why I like that one. It doesn't really mean anything, but it's just a word. What really counts is your life, your kids' life, your grandkids. And if you change it after I'm dead. I'm good with that. Because I know I'm temporary, and I accept it. And it's something that your kids can talk about and decide. But when we talked about what it means to us, we're old guys, you know, I say old guy club. I didn't like the previous end of the trail statue we had with one on. That didn't do anything for me, and I really didn't appreciate it. It wasn't who we are, but so it means a lot to me. You see that picture there with the Gustola? There's no difference. It's what we make of it and what it means in our lives. To me, it's 1966 all over when I graduated. Tyler graduated in 65 and Dennis in 67, I think. Yeah. So we're all in that 60s group. A lot of love during that time and peace, and almost like now, cannabis. There's a lot of things that recycle through the years. But the one thing that I see is the proudness that our young people have. See some beautiful Seneca women here today. Love it. One of the best singers on earth. And I'm happy to be here. I just would like to say, I had a very good friend. His name was Gary Gordon. Some of you know Steve Gordon as an undergrad. We believed in the warrior spirit. So we came to a basketball game in January. The temperature was about -2 degrees. So we thought, we want to see Tommy George play. Tommy George was a 4-letter man. Baseball, basketball, track, football, Syracuse, across the fumble. He was our hero. He was our role model. So we came and we knew there'd be girls there. That was the second reason. And we didn't dress for the weather. So we hitchhiked to watch the game. That was an easy thing. We came and watched the game. We walked out of the school. And there's no traffic. Went down to the res. We call it the res. So we hitchhiked. Couple trucks that went by and no ride. So we went down the railroad tracks and we ran. It was -degree weather because we had to stay warm. We made it home that night. Yeah. There must have been a reason for that. I call it school spirit. And to me, the warrior word is just a word. It's not offensive. Racist, that's not offensive either, because there's deaf people that cannot hear that. I often think about if you're blind, if you can't hear, the world must be a lot different than us. They don't learn the prejudices that we learn. They're not trained unless they learn Braille. Or if you can communicate to them how we're feeling. And this opportunity we have right now, just a few minutes and a few words, I give thanks to teachers and the people that make this possible, because it gives us an opportunity to get together again. And I don't profess to know everything that I profess to know, because it's better to know nothing than to know everything. The older I get, the more I forget. So it's a race. What you learn and what you forget. Now I got a good word for that. It's called COVID brain. And that's what I call it, and that's what I'm going to keep calling it. But having survived COVID and having chosen life, I really want to try to make a difference, not just for us, but for the next generation. I see nothing offensive. Beautiful picture that over Carson. He's a Vietnam vet, war hero to me. He drew this picture. And that's a new one. He'll sign it. I'll take it. I'm really proud of my brother. And he would want us to keep this, because I don't know if he's spoken yet, but I think we're leading up to his words. But I would like to see you wait. Change it some other time. There's no word. The offensive R word talked about the color of our skin. That was really offensive. I couldn't live with it, but that's what I did. No, a lot of natives that really didn't like that, but what can you do? This is just a logo, but to us it's pride. My dad told me there's no way to prove yourself a warrior. But I was a veteran and you could. That's why I joined the military. I thought maybe I could make a difference. I was in the Air Force. Bombs, bullets, missiles. Tyler's dad was my hero. He was the best leader ever. He fought to save our land. We lost. But he was gracious enough to build houses, homes, to build what we need to start our lives over. Even though our life changed from living along the river, selling sassafras and June pigs, making a living, to having to go out and get a job and push buttons the rest of our lives. That changed in the blink of an eye in 1964. So now we're here, and we have a younger generation who's much smarter and who know a lot more because of the computer age and kids to the best of their ability. But we want them to have a chance too. And I never thought, like Dennis said, I would put on Broad Street and see so many smiling native faces. Salamanca has been changing, and it's now changed into an integrated city. And we can work together to bridge the gaps so that there's no racism.
And we can afternoon, everyone. Coming out to that directly today. Seniors, don't forget, hopefully they'll be working on the wall and the decorations after school today. All 8th and 9th grade students attending the Washington DC trip in May are reminded of their $150 deposit payment that is due to the CN by February 10th, that's this Friday. It is the last payment before final payment, which are due March 1st. If you have any questions, please see Mrs. Eaton. Don't forget, spring course signups are available online, the Power School Parents Portal. Parents will need to sign into their parent portal account and sign any student in grades 7 to 12 up. Grade forward. If your parents are having issues or having trouble logging in or would like to create an account, please have them contact Levi. Students are reminded to check the detention list that is posted outside the high school office. Any student who is bringing a guest to the winter weekend dance and your guest does not attend Sully High School, you need to get a guest registration form from the high school office and get that turned back in by Thursday afternoon, tomorrow. There will be a National Honor Society meeting tomorrow after school, February 9th at 2:30 in the high school library. All members in National Honor Society should plan on attending this meeting. There will be a mandatory drama club meeting after school for those that auditioned earlier this month. That will be tomorrow after school in the auditorium. If any questions, please stop and see Mr. Kempitzer. The junior class will be staying Wednesday, today, and Thursday, tomorrow, starting right at 3 o'clock to decorate the hall of the gym. If you plan on staying for ELOC, ELOC will be held with Mrs. Kinney in the library and Mrs. Martinez in room 78. Good luck to the Mountainside boys basketball team as they travel up to LA Limestone today for their game. Hope you guys have a fantastic day. People stay outside. We'll be back here tomorrow. Animal Kingdom Day, dress as your habitat animal. Have a fantastic day, everyone. We'll see you back here tomorrow. You are dismissed.
Alan, for your time. I hope, everyone acknowledges Carson's new traffic. I love it. Thank you. Good luck. No matter what you decide, I'm okay with it. I'm not, just setting my ways only because I have a short time left on the team. And I will make every day count and not see fighting, not seeing that racism. Not, we need to bridge all the gaps. And I really love each other.
I just had a few things like, I had talked to my children about the whole issue and everything. At first, one of my sons was concerned about the logo. And when I asked him why, if it was because it was being misused like derogatorily from other schools, other students, perhaps maybe teachers, what, whatever, but that's what his issue is. And I explained to him, like, regardless, if we change the logo, when we go to other schools, they still know we're from the West. They still know we're Native American, that we're Senators. And those issues, I feel, are still gonna be there, whether we're warriors with this logo or not. And then, another thing I wanted to, bring up was, I feel like there could be.
Seniors, if you did not vote for King and Queen for winter weekend, you stop with somebody's office before you leave today. Seniors, if you did vote for King and Queen in English class today, you stop with somebody before you leave to vote.
I would like to see more of our culture incorporated into the programs for the sports and stuff. And talking with this, at work and with friends and stuff, it was brought up that at a time, there used to be someone that would come out and smoke dance before games. Or even like we play the national anthem, could we play an Iroquois song and Seneca song afterwards? Something that reinforces it more. But I feel that the issue with other schools and the ignorance that they may portray towards us, that's the education from their schools, from their parents, I feel like maybe New York State needs to take a bigger stand on that than not attacking, but forcing, schools to address the whole mascot and logo issue.
Thanks. Anyone else?
Am I a warrior? That mascot was good. Why is there, why is it, why is there, why does I have to choose sides? Am I a warrior? That mascot. Driving. Why am I all alone? Am I a warrior? What? Why? Sorry. Why am I just a rose? Yes. Why must my hat be shaved when I walk? Why do I? Not. Oh,
I forgot I wanted to say too that, I noticed there's a lack of non-native representation. And in the same discussion, like, we can't put ourselves in their shoes. How do they feel about the logo, about the name? Or is it just up to us?
We can insert that down. So I can answer that question a little bit. We've had a couple other forums where there were non-native individuals, and some of the messages were that the native population should have a greater say, and that was conveyed. To be honest with you, we have had very little input so far. This is our third session. And we've had a cumulative total of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 individuals. That's enrollment session, this is kind of exciting. But we will continue moving forward. Now, there was also the question about who is going to make the decision. All of this is going to be shared both with the Seneca Nation representatives, as well as with the school board. And that group of individuals is going to determine where we go moving forward. So it's not just me, although I seem to be just one thing. All right, let me go.
Real all this way. How it inspired me to do. Yeah, I got
Yeah.
Thinking of like everything we heard today. The story of my life. I found myself at the beginning of this meeting kind of questioning the same thing. What is the definition? Where you look it up, it says that someone who's engaged in combat or war. If your title is speech and always kind of shifted towards it's just a word. I mean, when you get that, I think of a time that really this fall before this was passed down and brought to light to be this big decision, right? Sat with Jared Musial and Judy, and we were talking about this conservation program and how do we bring it into the conservation fish and wildlife group incorporated with the school district, bouncing off these ideas. Concepts are really great program. Kind of the core of it is to engage with our youth to inspire them, right? To find exactly what they're saying. Am I an athlete? If I'm not an athlete, it's something else. Just to tap into someone here within the school district that might be our next leader in other areas than just athletics, to get involved in the environment. And we had a great meeting, really like excited. And like, what are we going to call this? And naturally it just conservation warriors came out of it. And the meaning behind using that term conservation warriors was, half inspired by reservation life. We got spirit warriors and there's a point where he says, what would you die? Right, think of your life, like, what would you literally give it all for? And without a doubt, when it comes to our land, to what we're doing to truly protect what we have for not just ours, these next generations to come, without a doubt, it inspires them to be a true warrior in the sense of environmental conservation. But that was kind of really took what we were trying to do and encapsulate it in a much stronger organic sense of like making you feel that. You know, it's something that I believe you are a warrior, you have that attitude, that mentality. It'll push you through things, through challenges, through fears, and it'll pull you through that. And I think that's what it's intended to do. I'm sitting here looking at these, and the meaning you guys have given that as a school district are represented on posters. You're saying these are your qualifications to become a warrior. You know, you guys as students have an opportunity to meet that standard, right? I think that is important for them to feel that, live that, see that. The other parts of school spirit, firepower. Digging up the logo, I like it. I like Carson's new rendition of it. I think it's well represented. And to Sarah's point, there's me. You know, we have to carry that. And that warrior attitude is going to help you prepare to have that conversation with someone outside this. Say, oh, why do you guys do that? Listen, that we can educate them through that piece of art. It's a catalyst for a better conversation. You know, it's like, you guys just want to do it this way. Here's how it's done appropriately. Other school districts looking to do that same thing, that are truly investing into what we're hearing is how do we change the behavior? How do we change other people's attitudes to seeing Native Americans represented? It starts at home. It starts in public school districts, top down, such as yourself, and having those and standing together to say, no, we're not going to go. That's that mentality. That's just.
So I find myself coming back to the high schoolers. So when we met with the president a month ago, you mentioned how there was a grassroots movement, youngsters here at school who want to see a change. What are their positions and what are they thinking and why do they want to see a change?
Actually, at this point in time, I don't have answers to those. I'm anticipating over the next probably 3 or 4 weeks, I'll be able to more clarify or clearly identify that. We haven't gathered input from them. I don't want to say it seems to have stalled, but we haven't heard that there was an initial sort of bubble up, but that seems to have faded away. I anticipate that when our government starts to collect that information, and we have Mr. Hubbard here.
Yeah, that's what I was going to talk about. That actually answers your question as well. So the student government will be conducting a survey for all of the students, at least in high school, and I believe the Seneca schools as well, gauging them on how they feel about the logo and the name. And then after that, if they want to add any qualitative data as well, we're going to have a forum like this hosted by our students in the activist club, but also in the student government and also in SYC to gauge their opinion on it as well. So we're trying to do that work to answer those questions, but do it at a time and give them the right space so that they can express themselves, and also see where other people are coming from different backgrounds. So I think once we get that data, we'll be able to have discussions about it, but then also release it to the public as well. But I'm not sure what.
That's how we're going to prevent it. It don't mean that they don't have to,
Mhm.
you know, what I mean, worry about what their friend next to them
Exactly.
thinks.
Yep, and the first survey is going to be anonymous. We're going to be conducting it in all the social studies classes, but they'll also be able to do it in lunch. So we're trying to get all of the students to be a part of that survey, which is extremely hard. But then if they do have strong reviews by it, want to express those, that's when we have a forum like this. And they won't be talking to necessarily adults, they'll be able to talk to some of their classmates.
Who will be compiling that survey and will the Senate Commission get input into the questions that are used in that survey? Because with surveys, you can influence data if you're questioning, in line with. So, well, who's designing the survey, who's commenting on the survey, and will Senate Commission representatives have access to that survey before? it's accepted?
So the survey initially was created by the student government, so a group of students, that are the leaders of the school. I think the initial survey was supposed to go out before the vacation next week, so it was gonna be done next week in classes, but I know the survey's done, so if we
Sure.
can get it,
We're
we
happy
can
to
share it for sure. And then the follow-up forums, probably talking about the schedule to be March 9th for the students that were interested in taking part in that.
And we're happy to run it through dissemination for input. Also, we're going to be a bias, but we want to make sure that it's,
The cultures that all around Mother Earth were raised to work with consensus. That if it's 45% yes and 55% no, or vice versa, or 40% this way, 60% that way, that isn't consensus. And some of the organizations that exist, they say, let's have the thinking of consensus plus or minus one. So some can disagree with the consensus, but they're still part of us. And that it's a paradox. And it's even a contradiction, but yet that's the way it is. And so we're going to have community members that have just a mild concern or feeling, someone that has a very intense, even extreme thought or feeling, but yet they're us, they're part of us. And so with our experience, we had a building here that was called the Haley Building, had a gymnasium, kitchen, and place to eat, and offices. Cattaraugus, they called it the Sailor Building. That building is still there. They were named after two people in Congress that supported the Seneca Nation during the Kenzu Dam struggle. And as you study that experience, the congressperson from Florida defended us on the floor in Congress, fought for us. He defended sovereignty, but yet he voted against the Civil Rights Bill. And so that's paradox. That's the things that we see in this work. And so it's okay if there's a range of opinions that don't fit other range of opinions, but it's there. Let's be the kind of community that works to understand and listen. Be a listener. And so with growth and with healing, it starts with listening. And so we find a range of conflicting opinions. Good, let's heal. And let's work with this. And, oh, that's going to take 20, 30 years. Okay, we'll go 20, 30 years. Or we'll deal with it this year. It's a life that isn't so rigid. And it's a life that has a growth mindset. And so let's hear the range of opinions and comments and not get shook up by some things that maybe touches a nerve with some of us. Let's just work for the understanding part of it, that there's a pathology, there's a reason why, there's a history why. And my dad had two union books, laborers in Olean and iron workers in Erie, Pennsylvania. And they finished the ironworking job. He went to Olean to get another job on construction with the laborers union. And he was sitting there and it was him and another guy that came in. And he was sitting there, he knew the union boss and his worker. And they were sitting in their little office and they were talking. My dad was listening. And they said, well, and the phone rang. There was a job, they needed one worker. And they said, well, let's hire Ralph. That was my dad, Seneca. Hire Ralph. And the union boss says, why? He said, if you don't hire Ralph, you're gonna have to hire that. And he used a derogatory name for an Italian. So the Italians went through that bigotry in the 60s, maybe even now. The Irish went through it. They went through that in the ghettos in New York City. After World War II with the GI Bill, the Italians and Irish got to move out of the ghetto into the suburbs. But that was the growth, the change. But in the meantime, some of that rigid thinking is still here. And it was there that day in the Union Colony. My dad told me that story. And I was just still wound up tight over the Kenzu Dam. He wanted me to know that the Italians went through the same treatment we did too. And work for consensus. That's our responsibility. And even if we don't arrive at consensus, we keep working on it. And be healthy. And have a thick skin where the peacemaker give us a ceremony to have a thick skin. The thickness is of 7 spans of your thumb to protect you from words of anger that are fired at you. He said that, peacemakers did that over 1,000 years ago. So over 1,000 years ago, before the Europeans, immigrants came here, there was gossip and there was anger toward leaders and words being said. But the peacemakers said, here's the way to have consensus. And so we were given those ways in our way of life. The other one the peacemaker said was to be careful and to protect against avarice. Avarice is greed for wealth. So when some families or some neighborhoods begin to make more money, they think about their own pockets and not their neighbor. How many of our students come from a low income family? How many of them struggle? How many don't have both parents? How many come here feeling stressed because there was hollering going on at their house all night? And there are kids, our students, and so there are factors like that that impact how we function in our relationships. And we're gonna have that growth thinking, that flexibility to help all of our students, not alienate any of them. And when we hear some of the alienation, our ears start listening, and we want to have compassion and empathy. Help them finish their senior year. So consensus, we may not reach consensus, but we're going to try.
My name is Barbara Linville. I was 2002, but very new to the district. I have 3 children that attended Walsh, and all 3 started at Sonic this year. And I just have a couple questions about this company. I guess what made the school want to utilize a branding company from both?
Sure. It was really a process by which it was included in a capital project. So our architect firm is And it was just a connection that they already had. So it was really a process of facilitating payment. That they would use.
As I see a lot of the artwork and stuff that these students, whether they're seniors, juniors, freshmen, I'm not sure, but that's shared on social media, and they're really young.
They absolutely are.
You know, I can't help but to think they might have come up with something better than else with the white feather. Has that been asked of them? Will it be? Is that an option moving forward for those students? And I don't know, Ally's still over there. I like what Ally said about, you know, educating us, needing that education. But part of what Donna said about not everyone always agreeing, you know, in our community, we have people in our community that are at least holdouts. They wouldn't sign. They fought and fought and fought. Those are the same people that probably still are here and they're not very educated. Do we want those people representing us out in Buffalo or wherever with our logo if they're not educated?
Is that an actual question or?
I guess that's just something I like.
I thought it was, but it got quiet, so I didn't come up with an answer. Okay. No, that's it, and that is a question that has come up, and we need to do a better job of that. I'll just answer that sort of, but I completely understand. the question.
I didn't know if you were done. But it kind of goes with that, to add in the academic piece. I agree with, I wasn't here when, Jackson spoke, but with what everybody else says, I'm on board with that. I agree with that as a community member and as a parent and as a staff member, but I've been in education and community services within our community for 23 years. And what we see overall this time of being aware, like, yeah, you can relate it to the sports teams and things like that, but we also see it with academics. Like if you think of being a warrior and being brave and following through and finishing strong and putting, you know, your hard work into it, we see that with academics as well. We see that with, you know, I'm going to use Darren Ross, who is a good friend of mine. We went to school together, and we see his battle with cancer over the past few years. And their thing that they put out there as a family is, we're going to be Ross strong, warrior strong, because it means so many things to different people, and depending on what your experience was and how you view yourself as being a warrior. So I wanted just to add that piece of the academics and the community part of it, not specifically the sports thing. And then somebody brought up with it's not inclusive of females, and it's not, but a long time ago, men were warriors. But we look at it now as like the lady warriors. You know, I know our two student representatives are both lady warriors. I've coached girls swimming for many years, and we're proud to be lady warriors, and we're the swimming women. And you take that on because you take it on as being part of this school, part of this. Okay.
Oh, just a reminder.
Okay.
This is unique.
Oh, we got
Go ahead.
But so everybody can take it in. It's not necessarily specific to boys or just to football. It really is for everything that we are in this community. You know, we have, I would joke, you know, to my friends' kids who are sabers, I'm like, yeah, you'll be warriors one day though. Like, go have fun being a saber right now. You'll be a warrior soon. But it really is. It's a whole community thing. And we've all grown up with this and being warriors and what each of us individually. Now I gotta go. I just wanted to share that.
All right.
We got one more thing,
Yes, sir.
about emblem and logo. A couple of savers, back in May last year during Native American, Heritage Week, and I designed a piece for them, for the Buffalo Sabres. I left their emblem alone, but I put a group of feathers on the top, and one single eagle feather, and put rays on it. So it sort of looks like a person, but it just had their feathers on it. And this recently, weeks ago, it's on the news. They had the Sabres on there, and there was a couple of them wearing my design. And the one guy said, I'm really proud to wear this. And it made me feel really good to do that. Perfect. So you get a chance, check out the couple of favors. It's one of the designs on that.
Those things I have fun.
Yeah.
To Barbara's point, whatever you do in the end really should be a set of artists that defines the final product.
That's all right. Yeah. And again, we'll see where we end up. Yeah, cool.
I just want to say that I don't.
Okay.
I don't, and if anything, I always felt proud. Especially like how Sarah said, like no matter what we're called or whatever, wherever we go, they know we're coming from conservation. So when I was younger or whatever, or you're not, we're wearing the same thing. I always felt like unified, proud. Oh, that's just my opinion, that's my experience. And my kids joke, you know, about like the name or whatever. The only time they are kind of the big who's.
We are approaching 3:00, but I do not want to cut anybody off in any way. Has everyone had an opportunity to share? So, I just, wanted to say, we have several more, there's another one at 6:00 tonight, if you want round two. You're more than welcome to come. If something comes up that you would like to get in touch with me personally, feel free. My contact information is everywhere. If you want to write it down, you're more than welcome. Right now, I'll just give you my phone number. 716-289-3456. That's just my cell phone number and answer at any time, pretty much. Feel free to share, pass that along to other individuals. I really want to extend my gratitude for your input today. It is opportunities like this that really allow us to not only hear some of the history, but the feelings that individuals have, but also to have us come together as a community around the central topic. And however this plays out, I think having people together to dialogue is critically important. Thank you once again for your participation.
You're